The resignation of Pope Benedict XVI took effect on February 28, 2013 at 2000 hours set, following Benedict's announcement of the same on February 11. It made him the first pope to relinquish the office since Gregory XII was forced to resign in 1415 to end the Western Schism, and the first pope to voluntarily resign since Celestine V in 1294. All other popes in the modern era have held the position from election until death. Benedict resigned at the age of 85, citing declining health due to old age. The conclave to select his successor began on March 12, 2013 and elected Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Argentina, who took the name of Francis. Benedict chose to be known as Pope Emeritus upon his resignation, and he retained this title until his death in December 2022. Announcement. On February 11, 2013, the World Day of the Sick, a Vatican holy day, Pope Benedict XVI announced his intention to resign at the Apostolic Palace in the Sala del Consistoire, at an early morning gathering held to announce the date of the canonization of 800 Catholic martyrs. Speaking in Latin, he told the attendees that he had made a decision of great importance for the life of the Church. He cited his deteriorating strength due to old age and the physical and mental demands of the papacy. He also declared that he would continue to serve the Church through a life dedicated to prayer. 2 days later, he presided over his final public Mass, Ash Wednesday services that ended with congregants bursting into a deafening standing ovation that lasted for minutes while the pontiff departed St. Peter's Basilica. On February 17, 2013, Benedict, speaking in Spanish, requested prayers for himself and the new pope from the crowd in St. Peter's Square. Post-papacy. According to Vatican spokesman Federico Lombardi, Benedict would not have the title of cardinal upon his retirement and would not be eligible to hold any office in the Roman Curia. On February 26, 2013, Father Lombardi stated that the Pope's style and title after resignation are His Holiness Benedict XVI, Roman Pontiff Emeritus, or Pope Emeritus. In later years, Benedict expressed his desire to be known simply as Father Benedict in conversation. He continued to wear his distinctive white cassock without the pellegrina. Instead of the red papal shoes, he wore a pair of brown shoes that he received during a state visit to Mexico. Cardinal Camerlengo Tarcisio Bertone destroyed the ring of the fisherman and the lead seal of Benedict's pontificate. Benedict wore a regular ecclesiastical ring. After his resignation, Benedict took up residence in the papal palace of Castel Gandolfo. As the Swiss Guard serves as the personal bodyguard to the Pope, their service at Castel Gandolfo ended with Benedict's resignation. The Vatican Gendarmerie ordinarily provides security at the papal summer residence. They became solely responsible for the former Pope's personal security. Benedict moved permanently to Vatican City's Mater Ecclesiae on May 2, 2013, a monastery previously used by nuns for stays of up to several years. Benedict XVI lived in the monastery until his death on December 31, 2022. He died there after having been ill for several days. After his funeral on January 5, 2023 in St. Peter's Square, he was buried in a tomb next to his predecessors underneath St. Peter's Basilica. Reactions. Australia's Prime Minister Julia Gillard, Brazil's President Dilma Rousseff, Canada's Prime Minister Stephen Harper, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel, United Kingdom's Prime Minister David Cameron and United States President Barack Obama praised Benedict and his pontificate, while Italy's Prime Minister Mario Monti and Philippines President Benigno Aquino III expressed shock and regret, respectively. Cardinal Walter Brandmüller revealed that he initially thought the news of the renunciation was a carnival joke, according to an interview he gave with the Germany daily newspaper, Bild. Metropolitan Archbishop of Lagos Alfred Adewale Martin said of the resignation, "We do not have this sort of event happening every day. But at the same time, we know that the Code of Canon Law promulgated in 1983 makes provision for the resignation of the Pope, if he becomes incapacitated or, as with Benedict XVI, if he believes he is no longer able to effectively carry out his official functions as head of the Roman Catholic Church due to a decline in his physical ability. This is not the first time that a pope would resign. In fact, we have had not less than 3 who resigned, including Pope Celestine V in 1294 and Pope Gregory XII in 1415. Pope Benedict XVI was not forced into taking that decision. Like he said in his own words, he acted with full freedom, being conscious of the deep spiritual implication of his action. By his decision, the Holy Father has acted gallantly, and as such we must commend and respect his decision. Cardinal Timothy M. Dolan, the Archbishop of New York, said that Benedict brought a listening heart to victims of sexual abuse by clerics. 1 year before the Pope's resignation, historian John M. Sweeney spoke of Benedict's connection to Celestine V in his book, The Pope Who Quit, how Benedict's comment when he became Pope, "Pray for me that I may not flee for fear of the wolves," recalled a similar comment made by Celestine. Sweeney also compared and contrasted other aspects of the 2 popes' personalities and tenures leader of the Church. A spokesman for Yonah Metzger, the Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel, stated, "During his period there were the best relations ever between the Catholic Church and the chief rabbinate, and we hope that this trend will continue." I think Benedict deserves a lot of credit for advancing interreligious links the world over between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. He also said that Metzger wished Benedict XVI good health and long days. Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama and spiritual head of the Gelug sect of Tibetan Buddhism, expressed sadness over the resignation, while noting his decision must be realistic, for the greater benefit to concern the people. Benedict XVI delivered his final Angelus on Sunday, February 24. He told the gathered crowd, who carried flags and thanked the Pope, "Thank you for your affection. I will take up a life of prayer and meditation to be able to continue serving the Church." The Pope appeared for the last time in public during his regular Wednesday audience on February 27, 2013. By February 16, 35,000 people had already registered to attend the audience. On the evening of February 27 there was a candlelight vigil to show support for Pope Benedict XVI at St. Peter's Square. On his final day as Pope, Benedict held an audience with the College of Cardinals, and at 4:15 p.m., local time he boarded a helicopter and flew to Castel Gandolfo. At about 5:30 p.m., he addressed the masses from the balcony for the last time as Pope. After this speech Benedict waited out the final hours of his papacy, which ended at 2000 hours set, 8 p.m., and promptly the See of Rome became vacant. An uncertain number of people believe that the resignation of Benedict XVI was not valid, and that he therefore never resigned, that Pope Francis was an anti-pope and Benedict XVI still remained pope. Such a position is called benevacantism, a portmanteau of Benedict and sedevacantism, resignationism, or beneplenism. Supporters of this position assert that the phrasing or grammar of Benedict XVI's resignation statement, given in Latin, did not effectively remove him from office of the papacy. Benedict himself publicly rejected this theory. Since Benedict's death, some former adherents to benevacantism now hold to sedevacantism, while others considered Francis to be the pope. No other pope had stepped down since Gregory XII in 1415, and Benedict was the first to do so voluntarily since Celestine V in 1294. When he became 265th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, it was the culmination of the rapid, and highly controversial, rise of Joseph Ratzinger. Supporters portrayed him as a highly intellectual man who labored to protect the spiritual inheritance bequeathed to him by Pope John Paul II. To his critics he was the ultimate exponent and guardian of the Church's dogmatic approach to issues like abortion and contraception. The outrage he sometimes caused seemed typical of a man who was never afraid of upsetting people, if he believed something had to be said or done. Joseph Aloysius Ratzinger was born into a profoundly Catholic family on April 16, 1927, in the southern German state of Bavaria. He was the son of a police officer with, as he later put it, simple country roots. His youth was indelibly marked by World War II. Forced to join the Hitler Youth, he served in an anti-aircraft unit which defended a BMW plant outside Munich. Later he dug anti-tank trenches before deserting in the dying days of the war. In 3 days of marching, we hiked down the empty highway, in a column that gradually became endless, Ratzinger recalled. The American soldiers photographed us, the young ones, most of all, in order to take home souvenirs of the defeated army and its desolate personnel. From 1946 to 1951, he studied philosophy and theology at Munich University. And, in June 1951, together with his brother George, he was ordained a priest. After completing a doctorate in theology, Father Ratzinger, as he was, became a university professor, teaching dogma and fundamental theology at a number of places, including Freising, Bonn and Munster. At the time, Ratzinger was a champion of the reformist liberal agenda that drove the Second Vatican Council. Indeed, after taking up a post at Tübingen University, in southern Germany, in 1966, he became a close friend of the leading liberal theologian, Hans Küng. In the early 1950s, Joseph Ratzinger supported a reforming, liberal agenda. Küng, who brought Ratzinger to Tübingen, would later be barred from teaching by his former colleague, after he rejected papal infallibility. And, when 1,360 prominent and radical theologians signed a famous statement in 1968 asserting their freedom to explore the faith, he was among them. The group rejected the Vatican's dominance, arguing that Catholics should have the freedom to question the decisions of the Roman Curia, the Vatican departments that help run the Church. It was the political upheavals of 1968 that led to a dramatic change in Joseph Ratzinger's theological outlook. Student protests, mirroring those in the United States and Paris, broke out in Tübingen. Literature branding the cross as a sadomasochistic artifact appeared throughout the university, and lectures were disrupted by tomato-throwing radicals. Profoundly shocked by this outbreak of radical theology, which he characterized as brutal, Ratzinger left Tübingen for the more conservative University of Regensburg. As his former assistant, Wolfgang Bienert, puts it, Ratzinger believed that he was in some way responsible, guilty of the chaos, and that the university and society and church were collapsing. From that point on, Joseph Ratzinger no longer entertained any thoughts of reforming the church, of breaking down its rigid hierarchical structure, and of encouraging collegiality between the Vatican and Catholic bishops. Instead, he became an enthusiastic advocate of orthodoxy and continuity, a firm bulwark against dissent in what he considered to be an increasingly disjointed and permissive world. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger with Pope John Paul II, who he went on to succeed in 2005. Joseph Ratzinger became a prime candidate for rapid advancement, and it was no surprise when his ideological soulmate Pope Paul VI appointed him Archbishop of Munich, and then Cardinal, in 1977. The call to Rome was not long in coming. In 1981, Pope John Paul II appointed Ratzinger as prefect of the Vatican's office to protect the purity of church theology, once known as the notorious Holy Inquisition. Ratzinger had criticized the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith as an all too smoothly functioning body which prejudged every question almost before it had come up for discussion. But he took to his work with typically energetic enthusiasm. During the 1980s, he spearheaded the Church's campaign against liberation theology, a potent blend of Catholicism and Marxism particularly popular in Latin America. He also took an uncompromising line within the Roman Catholic Church. As theological enforcer for Pope John Paul, he had called priests and academics to Rome to explain themselves before requiring them to sign repudiations of their thinking. Others would be silenced or even excommunicated. Liberals were appalled, soon nicknaming him the Panzer Cardinal, while conservatives viewed Ratzinger's actions with approval. Later, he would attack what he saw as religious relativism, the belief that no one faith can claim to be the sole vessel of truth or to represent the world's only savior. In 2000, he published Domini Isus, the Lord Jesus, a controversial document that stated, In no uncertain terms, the Roman Catholic Church's view that it was the one true Christian denomination, and that all others were deficient. Cardinal Ratzinger casts incense over the coffin of Pope John Paul II during the funeral mass in St. Peter's Square. A few days later, Ratzinger became Pope Benedict XVI. In 2001, he persuaded John Paul to put the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith in charge of all allegations of sexual abuse against priests. This had previously been under the control of individual dioceses. Ratzinger argued that there should be no statute of limitations on such allegations and for a fast-track dismissal of offenders. His determination to tackle the problem ruffled feathers at the Vatican. Following John Paul's death in April 2005, it was Cardinal Ratzinger, as Dean of the College of Cardinals, who presided over the funeral mass, delivering the homily, based around Christ's words, "Follow me." Days later, that is exactly what he did, triumphing in the papal conclave after a mere 4 ballots to become the spiritual leader of the world's 1.1 billion Catholics. His belief in the supremacy of the Catholic Church was bound to cause friction, and it surfaced in a controversial speech he gave in his native Germany in September 2006. Invited back to the University of Regensburg, where he'd been a theology professor, he quoted comments by a 14th-century Christian ruler who had said that the Prophet Muhammad's belief in a holy war was evil and inhumane. Although he didn't explicitly endorse the opinion, he did go on to discuss in detailed terms the reasons why spreading faith through violence should be regarded as unacceptable. Habemus Papam. The newly elected Pope Benedict XVI waves to the crowds from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Muslims around the world were outraged, regarding the speech as a full-blown attack on their faith, and Pope Benedict was forced to apologize. However, he didn't withdraw the remarks as many had demanded. Instead, he simply said he was sorry that some of his comments had been seen as offensive. His expressions of regret failed to convince some commentators, who pointed out that the Pope believed interfaith dialogue was difficult while Christians were denied religious freedom in some Muslim countries. There was further controversy during the Pope's visit to South America in 2007 when, during a speech in Brazil, he suggested that native populations had been silently longing for the Christian faith brought by colonizers. There were protests from many indigenous groups, with one organization claiming that representatives of the Catholic Church of those times, with honorable exceptions, were accomplices, deceivers and beneficiaries of one of the most horrific genocides of all humanity. On his return to Rome, the Pope acknowledged that it was not possible to forget the suffering and the injustices inflicted by colonizers against the indigenous population. However, he repeated his view that Catholicism in South America had favorably shaped their culture for 500 years. He was less outspoken during what was seen as a potentially sensitive visit to the Middle East in 2009. On his arrival, he made a speech attacking anti-Semitism, and later, at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem, he called for the suffering of the victims never to be denied, belittled, or forgotten. But, after meeting the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, he also called for the creation of a sovereign Palestinian state with internationally recognized borders. Pope Benedict presents gifts to the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh at Holyrood Palace during his visit to the UK in 2010. His state visit to the UK in September 2010, the first ever by a reigning pope, was an opportunity for him to speak out against the critics of organized religion. Today, the United Kingdom strives to be a modern and multicultural society. In this challenging enterprise, may it always maintain its respect for those traditional values and cultural expressions that more aggressive forms of secularism no longer value or even tolerate. His health had been worsening prior to his election, and the additional burdens of papal office took their toll, although it was only later revealed that he had been fitted with a heart pacemaker in 2005. On February 11, 2013, he told his cardinals that he would leave office on account of his advancing years and continued ill health. The announcement was made without any warning and delivered, as befitted an academic theologian, in Latin. He was succeeded by the current Pope, Francis I. Pope Emeritus Benedict greets his successor, Pope Francis. He continued to wear the white robes of the papacy but preferred simply to be known as Father Benedict. Benedict retired to a Mater Ecclesiae monastery located within the Vatican Gardens. He chose to retain his papal name, rather than revert to being Joseph Ratzinger, but preferred to be known simply as Father Benedict. He had been in declining physical health for a number of years. He caused controversy in April 2019, when he blamed clerical sexual abuse, the scandal he had tried to tackle as a cardinal, on the all-out sexual freedom of the 1960s, and the consequent rejection of God's teaching. 3 years later, a report commissioned by the Catholic Church accused Benedict of having failed to act to prevent instances of child abuse while Archbishop of Munich in the 1970s. The former pope denied the claims. An urbane and cultured man, Pope Benedict was an accomplished pianist, with a penchant for Mozart and Brahms. He also spoke 8 languages, including German, English, French, Italian, Portuguese and Spanish. Like his mentor, John Paul II, Pope Benedict believed there was a completely Christian alternative to the humanistic philosophies of the 20th century, Marxism, materialism and liberalism. But he believed that Christianity's influence would rise again like the mustard seed, in insignificantly small groups whose members intensively live in combat with what is evil in the world, while demonstrating what is good. Thank you for watching this video.